you had a bill with a hearing just this week.
Yes.
That would dedicate sales tax revenue from car sales to transportation projects.
Yes.
You scaled back the bill.
Yes.
Was it because of concerns that some members don't have a full appreciation of the situation?
One of the logic, and Chairman Phillips we filed identical bills in the House and the Senate. And the bill that we had laid out there was to dedicate the vehicle sales tax, but phase it in over a period of years. And the biggest argument against that was that it takes so much out of the general revenue, 8, 10 years out there, that it would be difficult to do the budget. And so what I came back and did, I said, okay, let's do a baseline. This is what we did on the severance tax back in 1987, or the legislature did, was established a baseline. And so the year I picked, and the amount I picked was $2.5 billion as a baseline, which was the amount of money in 2010 that the vehicle sales tax brought in, 2.5. Now, last year it was $3.3 billion, so there's $800 million above the baseline in the last year. $800 million is kind of a magic number because that's a debt service on Proposition 12 and 14 combined. And so in that, you can also pay for 12. So we did pare it back, but with the estimate the comptroller's office had for vehicle sales tax for the next 2 years on the budget we're working on is about $3.9 billion per year. I think some of us who've looked at the numbers think it might end up closer to 3.5, but either way, that's still almost $1 billion a year. So that's $2 billion that would go to transportation, which is part of it doesn't get you all the way there, but it gets you part of the way there. Because what's happening is we're not even staying even, we're actually digging a hole. And if if the legislature will agree to move the bill and allow us to take that, then we at least are not digging a hole, we're staying even, maybe slowly moving up. Doesn't solve the whole problem, but it's going to take a number. It's not one silver bullet's not going to do it. It's going to take different pieces. So that is why I scaled the bill back, to try to get the bill moving.
And do you feel like it is moving now? Are you hopeful that it's?
Well, you'll have to ask somebody else that. I think the members, I think, would like to vote for the bill. It would go to the voters. The voters, I believe, would approve that in a heartbeat. It's probably this area of funding is probably the most talked about in the legislature.
And I think that's right. And what he's talking about is we help others move it. We both chair transportation committees. We don't chair the budget committees. And so we have to be advocates for transportation and pushing and saying, what's a long-term source of revenue? And I applaud Senator Nichols. He went around the state talking about why exactly, and I think it'd be great to hear from him again, why exactly it makes sense to go this route. And I do think members like this idea. And I think that with some of his changes, I think I'm hearing that maybe we can get some support from the budget writers, at least on the House side. We'll have to see. I think it's going to be important for us to get the budget done today. And I think within the next week or so, leadership in the Senate and House as it relates to transportation and finance, working with the governor's office, come together. We have plenty of time this session to do something. Some people say, well, we're running out of time. We have such short time left. We've got an eternity, truthfully, in legislative time. I believe we have plenty of time to accomplish something. We may not come out of this session with everything that, the number that we hear Phil Wilson talk about with TxDOT, the $4 billion extra a year we need. And I don't quarrel with that number, but if we can get somewhere, meeting somewhere in there, that's what we need to be focused on. So I do think we have time, but I love to hear Senator Nichols talk about why it's important. Compared to the gas tax that we have currently, the problem with it being a declining revenue, and share, because he does such a good job explaining why this is the automobile sales tax is I think a good choice for us to say this is a way we're going to help fund transportation.
I think what the chairman's referring to is if you start fresh and take a chalkboard and you begin laying out core principles, if you're going to create a funding source for transportation, what should it have in it to accomplish the long-term goal of funding transportation. And first on that list is it needs to be a predictable revenue source. So unless TxDOT can reasonably estimate 7, 8, 10, 12 years out of how much revenue they're going to have, they can't begin planning those projects. There's transportation planning involved. Predictability is real important. We have the environmental, the right-of-ways, the engineering, all that kind of thing. So it takes a while to move a transportation project. Second, if it's predictable, it must be constitutionally dedicated. Because if it's not constitutionally dedicated, when we hit those bad years like last session, those monies are going to disappear. It's got to be constitutionally dedicated. It needs to be transportation related. I think the public expects that, and I think the members of the legislature expect that it should be transportation related. It needs to automatically adjust for inflation. And that's where we've kind of really missed it on some of the revenue sources we have now. The fuel tax, 20 cents a gallon, over 20 years ago. And the gasoline's gone from $1 to $3.50, $3.60 or whatever, and it stayed 20 cents a gallon. So it needs to adjust for inflation. Same thing with vehicle registration fee.
Well, actually, I want to stop you there because Senator Williams, who does oversee the budget in the Senate, has come out very strongly for vehicle registration fees, and he's pretty much said he's not too crazy about your idea, and he thinks new revenue is needed, and I think it's every $10 you raise the registration fee, you'd net about $210 million. I'm just wondering, do you think that's, you're not in favor of that approach?
I didn't say that. I think there's a lot of ideas. We need to nourish all the ideas, but I think we need to go back and test them with the principles, because the last principle I was going to say has to do with it needs to be not dependent on the fuel source. In other words, gas tax doesn't work on electric cars. Gasoline or diesel tax doesn't work on we have our heavy truck fleet is going to be slowly converting to natural gas. So it's a totally different type of funding. And so the cents per gallon doesn't work on natural gas. And so I think if you're going to really solve a long-term problem, test it against all those 5 principles.
Well, and so the registration fee, why? Does that not fit the...
I'm focused right now on the
sales
vehicle
tax.
sales tax and keep working with that, and that's the direction I'm heading.